And we're live. So we're happy to have David Casey from Resource Network. He's the CEO, and he's got a fascinating topic to talk about today. And I'll let you have the floor, David.
Thanks so much, June, and thanks for hosting and thanks for inviting me. So my name is David. I'm co-founder of Resource, and today I'll be talking about endogenous money. So I'm going to make a bold claim that there isn't really true money on the blockchain yet, and you'll see it's not an entirely fabricated claim. So it's a bit of an odd claim because blockchain was first introduced by Bitcoin as a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Since then, it's undoubtedly achieved marvelous things. Besides creating an entire subclass of surprisingly rich nerds, it's birthed not only a new industry, but an entire zoo of new asset classes. But what about the one thing that it was designed to be? An alternative to existing state-sanctioned forms of money. In many ways, it definitely is. Bitcoin and most other cryptocurrencies excel, probably more than anything that came before them, in fungibility, durability, and portability, which are three of the five most important attributes of money. But in some very crucial ways, none of them really pass as money in the true sense of the word. In fact, Bitcoin, altcoins, utility tokens are so exciting exactly because they're not money and don't behave like money. They're assets we normally buy and hold to make a profit, not something we earn and spend to make a living, which is the very definition of cash. I personally spent what would now be hundreds of dollars for a cup of coffee on various occasions over the last few years, trying to convince people that Bitcoin was indeed cash. I wouldn't say that I regret each time, but if I'd spent 43 million US dollars for a pizza, I'd probably be traumatized so much that I would never use Bitcoin as currency again. So while we may use our crypto holdings as a means of payment, when it comes to the actual monetary function of pricing goods, services, labor, and capital, we'll normally revert to the best thing we have at hand, which even in our industry are fiat currencies wrapped into a cryptographic container, namely stablecoins. The problem being that stablecoins, collateralized or algorithmic, and fascinating discussion that I just witnessed on the last panel, they're not stable in an absolute sense, but they lean on an external target in order to achieve stability. They're essentially client assets that expand the reach of central bank policies, namely the Fed, into the crypto markets. That's even true with DAI, which uses algorithmically controlled crypto collateral to mimic the behavior of fiat money. While more people might feel comfortable with entering a long-term contract denominated in DAI than in Dogecoin, we do have to thank central banks for the price stability that makes this so, and not an independent market. I heard one of the speakers mention RAI. Previously, that may be an exception. So here's the $3 trillion question. Can we even imagine a form of money that is neither pegged to fiat or arbitrary goods, such as gold, but that would still allow us to price things, make long-term commitments, and predict future costs? Can we think of a form of money in which we would happily denominate prices in a 5-year contract without using fiat as a reference? To answer these questions, we'll need to redefine stability. Instead of treating stability as an arbitrary relationship between abstract numbers, as investors tend to do, we need to think of it the way that normal, actual people do. How many hours do I need to work in order to pay rent and buy some things? Will this be the same next week? And if not, why? Is my contribution now less valuable, or have the things that I want and need become more scarce? If we think like that, we'll soon discover that money isn't really an asset in the tangible sense, but rather an entry into a ledger, tracking human activity and the availability of resources. And we wouldn't be the first ones to think this way. Tally sticks have actually been around about 45,000 years, believe it or not, to track all kinds of things, mostly mutual obligations. Cutting a piece of wood in 2 unique pieces created the first immutable ledger that was mainly used to record debt, but not financial debt as we would think of it today. This primitive form of debt was more like time-delayed barter. You'll hunt a hog for me today, and I'll give you a few bags of rice in a few months from now after the harvest. In this sense, money is just barter transcending space-time. The moment these tally sticks became tradable, a wheat farmer could pay their worker with a notch on a stick instead of a bag of wheat, which the worker could directly trade for freshly baked bread the very same day, even if the baker didn't have immediate need for more wheat anytime soon. The tracking of obligations and commitments made it so that value could now be produced in one place and time and then consumed at some later stage. What's interesting here is the amount of notched tally sticks is neither constant, scarce, nor unlimited, but rather expands and contracts dynamically depending on the state of the economy that they served. Notched tally sticks are created when work has been done and paid for, and are destroyed when someone comes along to redeem them against the fruits of this labor. So we get an elastic money supply that adjusts itself to meet the amount of value produced in a given market. Such a money supply is what economists call endogenous, or arising from within, rather than imposed from the outside. One of the questions we asked ourselves at Resource is, how could this method be reliably ported to the blockchain to create money that is truly endogenous to the internet? Mutual credit, a centuries-old method for debt clearing, held many of the answers that we were looking for. Just like notches on a tally stick, mutual credit money is spent into existence when debt is created, in other words, minted. And it's destroyed or burned when equal exchange is achieved, i.e. when the baker redeems the tally stick against a bag of wheat. Just that in our case, instead of uncountable individual sticks, we have one large stick, which we use the Celo blockchain, with each notch being a freshly minted resource dollar unit, the endogenous stable credit serving the resource network. And we're not using the term stable coin, we're using the term stable credit because these are not liquid. In other words, they're not convertible into fiat or cryptocurrencies at this time. The way that we've created a stable credit, just like tally sticks, backed by whatever is being traded with it. If you're creditworthy, you can access a credit line, spend money into existence to buy what you need, which is then destroyed whenever someone buys something from you and closes your overdraft or negative balance by doing so. This way, resource dollar can be redeemed against all goods and services offered on the resource market. And in order to make this happen, we had to create the first negative balance enabled token, or in other words, a balance that can be below zero on chain. Now you might say, hold up there, these tally sticks only had value because someone, in our case the farm owner, was legally obligated to accept them as a means of payment. And of course the same is true for the resource dollar. The circulating resource dollar supply only maintains its value because someone somewhere has a corresponding amount of debt that needs to be repaid in resource dollars. How do you pull this off in a decentralized environment? How do you get people to pay their debts or assess creditworthiness to begin with? To answer these questions is precisely why we've built the resource protocol, which would be a presentation in its own right, but I'm not going to go too much in that. Just take a short, brief tour. Underwriting, risk assessment, risk assumption, and risk management are achieved by a distributed network of competing underwriters, staking mechanisms, and reserve pools. While the enforcement of obligations is transferred to a secondary debt market in which lost accounts or default accounts are auctioned off to the highest bidder without the protocol or its DAO ever having to directly interface with court systems. While the mechanics of endogenous or internal stable credits are fascinating, what's much more interesting is the fact that they've already allowed us to issue more than $1 million worth of interest-free credit, which our users have used to payroll employees, buy food, and access healthcare services. Note that no one has physically lent these businesses $1 million. This interest-free debt endogenously arose from network activity and value created, just like notched tally sticks did. And the best part is that you don't need to trust our network or our underwriters or our risk management system. The resource protocol can be used by anyone, anywhere, communities, supply chains, municipal governments to create their own endogenous stable credits and serve their own circular economies. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, David. Yeah, feel free to reach David at David1Casey on Twitter, or his email, david@resourcenetwork.co. And yeah, thanks so much. See you in the crypto world, and we'll get our next speaker in here.
Thanks so much for hosting.
Thanks so much, David. Interesting topic.
Thank you.